Okay, so I'm going to show you a quick tutorial of how to edit this photograph, including a sky overlay and some other filters that will just add a lot of extra artistic value to how this image looks. Because it's a cute photograph, but we can make it a lot better by doing some fairly simple steps. So the first thing I'm going to do in Lightroom is I'm going to apply my base edit, and I'm going to crop it so that I'm centering the girls just a little bit more, and I'm going to bring it down. So that I didn't mess with the white balance, but it includes some exposure, contrast, clarity, vibrance, tone curve, sharpening, bringing it up to 50, and some dehaze. Those are the things that are included in that base edit. So nothing too tricky or complex. It's just a matter of applying that little bit of a matte finish and sharpening it up. So then I'm going to right click it and I'm going to take it into Photoshop. Now once we are in Photoshop, I'm going to hit Command J and duplicate my layer over here. And then I'm going to use my wand tool, which is the letter W, and I'm going to select, click and drag this entire area of the sky. And by using the Option key, you'll see that these go from plus to minus. That's Option on a Mac or Alt on a Windows, and you can add and subtract to your mask. And I'm just going to quickly subtract a couple little areas here, and then I'm going to click Select and Mask at the top. Now, if your mask area does not look like mine, then you can click up here where it says View, and you can change your view. I prefer it on black, and I like to see what is underneath, so I usually keep the opacity around 50 or 60, but you can have it go all black if you want a little bit more contrast. And the black area is the area that is not in your mask. But as you can see, if we do anything with this mask as it is, it's way too crisp. It needs to be a lot smoother. So I'm going to take my feathering up between 4 and 5, and I'm going to smooth out a little bit, somewhere around 15 here, just to kind of make that a little bit more clean of a line, a little bit more natural. And then by using my brush tool and having this on plus, I'm going to add to my mask areas all around this tree line. And I'm going to add some of this tree here. And so what I am doing right now is I'm telling it that these areas need to be added to my mask, and I need it to be a lot more detailed than the wand select tool could accommodate. So this sometimes takes a little minute, a good minute, because it is thinking pretty hard on these little fine blurry lines back here. Now this is particularly helpful when it comes to things like hair. So by putting this around her little ponytail, this is going to really help out with making this look a lot more natural. And I'm going to go up these little stalks. And you see I'm going over the entire kind of baseline there. I don't do that every time, but sometimes that is definitely needed. And you see a lot of those areas go dark as they are being added to the mask because they are turning black like this. And I don't need it to be exactly precise. It doesn't have to have every tiny little spot, but it does need to have enough of them that they show through and really and help add to the realism of the sky overlay that we are going to add. And let this think. I don't know why this is taking it a little longer. Okay. That looks pretty good, so I'm going to click OK. So now that I've got all these areas masked, I'm just going to hit Delete, and I'm going to hit Command D to unselect. And as you can see, it doesn't look like I did anything differently there. But what's going to happen next is I'm going to go to File and Place Embedded, and I'm going to open the Up in the Clouds from Jackie Jean that I have there, And I'm going to use this sky overlay, which I am going to place equal to the horizon right here. And I'm going to double click. And then I'm going to come down here and add a layer mask right down here in the bottom. It adds this little white box. And I'm going to use my gradient tool, pick the right one. And I'm going to start down here and I'm going to kind of come up just a little bit and I'm going to kind of fade that edge just a little bit. I'm going to do it again because I'm going to get the right kind of fade I want here. And what I'm trying to do is just kind of make that line under here kind of disappear and see a little bit more of this background. Now, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it, click and drag over here in the layers, and I'm going to put it in between these two layers. Now what I did is you can see where we've got this mask now that we did on this other layer showing up. And I find that this is a very easy way to put the sky overlays in. It's not always necessary if the person or the photograph that you're using does not have a very detailed background like ours does. This one has a very, very detailed background with all these trees and this grass and her hair, all this. So there's a lot going on back here. If you've got a very simple background, a sky overlay can just be dropped and then that little gradient put in there. And then what I'm about to show you here with the layer mask can usually do everything you need. But for this particular image, we have a very detailed background. So we really need this extra front layer to kind of help us out. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click this layer mask and I'm going to go over here to my brush tool. And you can see my brush tool is pretty big. I'm going to use my left hand bracket to kind of make it smaller, or you can right click and you can click and drag, but then you have to kind of guess on sizing. And I really don't like doing that. So I do this. So, and you can see I've got black and white as my options here. You'll notice that the color black, when I use my brush and paint on, you can see down here in your corner, if you go over here to your layers, you'll see that on your mask, you can actually see it drawing, okay, and turning black. That's because black is transparent in a layer mask. So the way to get, and white, if you switch them back and forth, white makes everything visible. So I can draw a very hard line here with my white. But what I want to do is by using my black, I am going to fade this area and make these blend, because a sky gets lighter at the horizon. So a lot of times, so it's really easy just to kind of use that mask and kind of brush it in there and lighten that edge. And now it looks a lot more natural. Now I'm going to take my opacity down really low. And I'm going to take my flow down really low. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more. I'm going to go around her head here. And then I'm going to come over here to these stalks and I'm going to lighten this area. And what I'm doing is I'm fading in those harsh edges so that these other pieces behind us can be seen. Okay. And I'm going to make this look a lot more natural. And I'm going to make this smaller so I can see a little bit more of this tree in here. Doesn't matter if it looks exactly like it did in the original. I just don't want it to look like it sticks out like a sore thumb. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take this opacity down to a lighter sky so that you can see some more of this stuff coming in through the background. And that just adds to the realism of adding these clouds. So the whole point of this was just to make it look a lot more real and to give some more definition in that sky, because it was a nice cloudy day, but that doesn't give us really a whole lot to play with up there. It just gives me a white sky. So that's kind of bland. Nobody really likes that. So yeah, adding a little bit of definition in there is really nice. I'm just cleaning this up a little bit, making these stalks come through, all that good stuff. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I like the sky like that. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new layer, and this is really going to trip you up, because I'm going to use my gradient tool that's a solid color, my paint bucket. I'm going to flip it to black, and I'm going to do a whole new layer of black. And the reason I'm doing that is the same reason that we did just here on the sky. And I'm going to add a layer mask, because remember, black is transparent, right, on the layer masks. So we're going to paint with our black tool, and we're going to make this a nice vignette. And the reason I do my vignettes like this instead of using the filter lens correction mode is because I like to control exactly where my vignette hits. Oh, I've got my opacity down still. I like to control exactly where my vignette hits. I want to be in complete control of that, and I don't want it to be just on my outside corners. So I really like doing my vignettes like this in Photoshop, because I can control shafts of light and all kinds of really nice features by doing it like this. And it just kind of adds a little bit of focus. I'm really not into strong vignettes, so I like just adding a tiny bit of focus on areas like the grass here. And as a matter of fact, I think in this particular one, gradient, oh, I should tell you what I just did. I double clicked my layer here on the solid black, and it brings up these blending options. And what I'm going to do is a color overlay, and I want this to be brown actually. I kind of decided that that would be better if it was brown. So that just kind of gives me a little bit of a brown hint around there, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So now I'm going to click on my little half circle over here, which is a new adjustment layer, and I'm going to do a color lookup. And I'm gonna see what I like here. I'm thinking that's too much. That's a little too much. That's the one I want. Okay. So now I'm gonna take my opacity down on that. Not the opacity, I'm gonna take my fill down. And to roughly, yeah, that's pretty good. Somewhere around 60%. Kind of gives it that nice matte look. And now you can see those browns showing through a little bit better on this one too. I'm actually going to increase my opacity there a little bit so that's stronger. Take it all the way up. Kind of see that brown showing up. And if I want to add a little bit more, which I do, I'm going to add my white in here. So I'm painting with my white tool, and I just totally did that on the wrong layer. So we're just going to hit Command Alt Option C. You can see this is backstepping because I did that completely on the wrong thing. Painting with my white to add brown into the layer mask. There we go. I make mistakes too, y'all. Okay. So now we're controlling where that brown is, and it's all right there on that grass where I want it to be. Just adding a little bit more focus onto the two of them. Okay, so next I want to do a vignette, a gradient pattern. And if you don't have all of these options, you can click the settings gear and just go down the list of each one of these and click them, and then click OK on the first one, and then append to everyone after that. And just go down the list and make sure all of these are visible on your options. And this is, I think, in color harmonies too. So if you click this pastel, I'm going to bring these a little closer together because I like there to be a little bit more of the purple and the yellow. I'm going to click OK. Then I'm going to change the angle of it, and I'm going to reverse it because I like the yellow to be up top where the sky is. And I'm going to use that same angle of that setting sun. I kind of drag it just a little bit here. There we go. Kind of get that setting sun angle. And then I'm going to change this to soft light and bring my opacity down. Not opacity, what am I doing? Fill. I know what I'm doing, I promise. I'm going to bring that down because I don't want this to be too strong. It just adds a little bit to it, gives it that creative coloring. And you can see kind of where that orange, that yellow is, and that fades into that purple. Adds a really nice little peak to it. Keep bringing that down to where I like it. And I really like that. Okay. And I'm going to show you one other thing. I have created an action that really works well. I call it the apply image, and I can give you a whole nother tutorial sometime on how that works. But by using that, I can, I have these 2-layer masks that control highlights and shadows. And so very, very distinctly, and I'm going to add some yellow and a little bit of red into that highlight. And in the shadows, I'm going to add a little bit more purple, just a little bit, and some more blue. Kind of bring those down just a bit. I can contrast that. These are things that you can play with until you get the coloring that you like. And if you want to kind of see where we started and where we got to, group those together and you can see that we are doing a really good job. I really like how this is turning out. The thing that I always end up playing with the most is my vignette. So, I mean, I just kind of go in here and just keep playing with it until I get it exactly where I want, creating that lighting effect. With this one, it's not too strong. But I think that's pretty good. Adds a lot of pretty graphic to that, makes it look very artistic. And I think that's good. The final step is to save it, and it will come back into Photoshop. I mean, into Lightroom. And it saves it right on top of these two. So you can see that there was your original image, and there is your edited one. I stack them on top of each other, and then you can export it and save it wherever you want to.